She should be with us now.
Okay, great. All right, if everybody, the council members can turn on your cameras so that I can see where you are. There you are. Thank you. Okay, good. Well, now that all the council members are in, we will commence the City of West Sacramento special meeting of the West Sacramento City Council and West Sacramento Redevelopment Successor Agency and West Sacramento Financing Authority May 10th meeting. We will proceed with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Christina Velez, the mother of John Velez. And Christina, can you please lead us?
Thank you, Mayor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, Christina, for saying the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. Tonight, we did not have a closed session, so there were no items to report. And Madam Clerk, please read the instructions for today's meeting.
One moment, please.
Thank you.
The City Council meeting will be conducted via teleconference pursuant to Government Code Section 54953. The City Council adopted Resolution 2246 on April 20th, 2022, confirming that a statewide state of emergency continues to exist because of COVID-19 virus pandemic, and that the Yolo County Public Health Officer continues to recommend measures to promote social distancing. Members of the public are asked to watch the meeting via live stream on the city's website or on Wave Cable Channel 20. Public comment may be provided using Zoom or through email by emailing the comments to clerk@cityofwestsacramento.org. Public comments that were sent via email before 3:30 p.m. this afternoon were provided to the City Council and also are posted on the city's website. Public comment giving on Zoom is limited to 3 minutes and can only be made on matters within the City of West Sacramento's jurisdiction. The council cannot take action or deliberate on items that are not on the agenda unless there is an emergency and the need to take action arose after the agenda was posted. If you would like to provide comment, please press the raise hand button or press *9 on your telephone. Speakers will be called on in the order that their hands are raised. Please leave your hands raised until you have finished making your comment. When your name is called, the clerk will unmute you and will notify you when your time is up. And the mayor does have the purview to allow for additional time if warranted. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next item on the agenda is item 1, which are presentations by the public on matters not included on the agenda, which each speaker has 3 minutes. And the clerk will notify you when your time is up, and council members are prohibited from discussing any matter presented under this item. Madam Clerk, do we have anything in writing or live public comment request? And at this time, we ask that people raise their hand. Ms. Christina, you may speak.
Oh. I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, are we taking comments on non-agenda items at this time?
We do not have an item, agenda item 1, but under public comment.
I've received no non-agenda item.
Oh, no, I see. Okay.
Email to the council.
Thank you. Are there any requests to speak at this time? I think Christina, you have your mic off. Are you asking to speak at this time?
Yes, Mayor.
Go ahead. Go ahead. You may speak now.
Thank you. Thank you, council members, Mayor Guerrero, for allowing me to speak on behalf of our son, John Abel Velez. John was born January 25th, 1991. John was tragically taken from us on March 3rd, 2022 in a horrible accident. John leaves behind his two daughters, Justenia and Jesselina, and his son, who is 6 months old, John Abel Velez II. We just want to say that I'm sorry. John was raised in Broderick, which has now been West Sacramento, and he also attended school here. He loved sport, especially soccer. He also loved camping and taught his girls everything he knew, just like his dad taught him. He loved soccer so much and couldn't wait to start teaching his girls and one day his son. He was loved by all whom he coached, and there were many. He was well respected by their parents as well. John had hundreds of friends we didn't even know. His life was taken too soon from us. John had such an infectious smile. Every time you saw him, he just gave you this loving feeling. We were upset that his memorial was taken down. Every day, day or night, there was someone there to visit with him. His daughters on the way to school in the morning, their mom would drive by and they would say good morning to their dad. He had so many friends we were not aware of. At his services, we were overwhelmed by how many had showed up to pay their respect to him and to his family and to his children. We were so overwhelmed with the love and the support that this community gave to our son. They, in fact, helped us to bury our son. He had his dear friend who stayed and helped to fill his grave. That's the love that John had. He was a great coach. He coached for the city of West Sacramento. He coached for Riverbank Elementary. That was his passion. And there's so much more that we could say. But we would just like to honor him and continue to honor him. He was so deserving of our love and our gratitude, as well as the community's gratitude. And we want to thank them all, every single one of them, for their love and support for John and his family. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Christina.
Maria Grijalba.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I would like to do the land acknowledgement. Since time immemorial, this land has been the home of the Patwin people. Today, there are 3 federally recognized Patwin tribes: the Catch-Heel Dihi Band of Wintun Indians of the Calusa Indian community, the Coltsil Dihi Band of Wintun Indians, and the Yocha Dihi Wintu Nation, excuse me for not pronouncing those correctly. The Patwin people have remained committed to the stewardship of this land over many centuries. It has been cherished and protected as elders have instructed the young through generations. We are honored and grateful to be here today on their traditional lands. And with my remaining time, I would like to remind the council members and Honorable Mayor that our purpose today is to remedy a past voter suppression that we've not had. We need to remedy that today, hopefully. And part of that remedy is getting a 4-year mayorship, because we've had a 2-year mayorship and we cannot really have a leader if that leader every 2 years has to be running and looking for votes instead of concentrating on being the leader of the city. And so I hope that we accomplish what we set out to do and we don't end up in court again, because that's not our purpose here, and we don't cost the city any more money. Thank you for this opportunity to speak.
One more speaker. Whoops. Jenna, would you like to make your comment?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and council members. My name is Jenna Rocha. I am here to speak on behalf of my cousin, John Velez. As Christina mentioned, we unfortunately lost him 2 months ago in a tragic motorcycle accident right here in West Sacramento. And the reason I'm speaking today is because this last Thursday, May 5th, the city of West Sacramento chose to very insensitively and disrespectfully mishandle the removing of my cousin John's memorial on West Capitol Avenue and Maple Street without giving his family prior notice or even leaving a note on the street sign that the memorial is on to do this themselves, and left his things in a box on the side of the road like trash, only for his girlfriend and mother of his recent child, his son, John, the mother of his child, Nydia Magallanes, and the first mother of his 2 oldest daughters, Eva Aguilar, along with her daughters as well, having to be completely caught off guard and upset by this sight when they went to visit his memorial that morning, like they do every day, as many of us continue to do every day since he passed away 2 months ago on March 3rd. I really honestly expected better for my city. This has upset myself and the entire community, as well as the Velez family, as my cousin John was a huge part of this community. He was a leader, a mentor, coach in the city's recreational sports leagues from softball to basketball and soccer for many years, as well as a great man and friend to many whom have lived here for years. His mother and father are also very prominent figures in this community. Danny and Christina Velez have both worked in the Washington Unified School District since I was a little girl back in the 90s, and I'm sure well before then, and have put much time and effort into raising a good majority of the residents and their children here in the city of West Sacramento. And they were also very involved in the Washington Little League Baseball for many years. So the fact that this well-respected family was not notified ahead of time and given the respect they deserved in removing their son's memorial just 2 months after his passing, which is still very fresh and painful for us all, for the decorating of the Memorial Day holiday, which is what John's girlfriend Nydia was told by code enforcement, was absolutely cruel, heartless, and just plain inconsiderate and disrespectful. This has created another trauma within our trauma, and it needs to be acknowledged. I'm not sure if many are aware that this even took place, but somebody must have been planning for this to be done for some time. And there's no reason the Velez family couldn't have been given the respect they deserve to be notified first. Like I said, my cousin's tragic passing just happened 2 months ago, so the city should know who his family is and certainly could have handled this much better. When speaking with Nydia about the removal of his memorial, she told me that code enforcement informed her memorials are a violation of the city which I was unaware of. And basically that we're lucky the memorial has been left alone in these last 2 months. But I've lived here all my life, 34 years, and I've seen many memorials around town remain untouched for many years. There's one out on Jefferson towards the farthest part of Southport Parkway, for example. A lot of them I have seen aren't even well maintained.
I'm sorry, that's 3 minutes.
If you could just wrap it up, Jenna, for your last.
This memorial has turned into a tragic place. This memorial has turned a tragic place into a beautiful symbol of the life and immense love that we all have for my cousin John Velez. So we are planning to restore it after the holiday, and we are hoping that the city of West Sacramento will have a heart and allow us to continue honoring my cousin John in the most beautiful way possible. Thank you so much for your time. With all due respect, the city has more important issues to worry about.
We have no additional speakers.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. Next in is our regular agenda item number 2 under the city manager is a public hearing and consideration of a map of city council districts. And we have Mr. Robinson and Mr. Armenta here to provide a presentation and go over what we need to do. Thank you.
Good evening. As with previous presentations, I'll do a brief kind of overview and then I'll turn it over to redistricting partners to do the bulk of the presentation. The primary purpose of this evening's meeting is to facilitate public testimony about the city's draft maps and for the council to select a map that will be used in the November 2022 election and subsequent council elections. As a reminder, the settlement agreement that we're operating under requires the city to receive public testimony on the issue of mayoral terms. So this meeting provides another opportunity for the public to comment on that issue if they choose. This meeting is a milestone in the city's extensive effort to involve the public in the districting process. This is the 6th public hearing the council has held on the districting issue, and the city has also conducted 4 community workshops. These outreach efforts have resulted in over 50 publicly submitted maps. At the council's last meeting, the council elevated a subset of maps for closer consideration this evening. Your staff report also includes a map that was submitted by Scott Rafferty. Redistricting Partners has concluded that all of the draft maps, as well as Mr. Rafferty's map, are legally compliant and could be approved as is by the council. While the council may select any map it chooses this evening, the maps that have been elevated as drafts represent the primary families or architectures of maps that are possible while meeting all of the relevant criteria. Since many of the publicly submitted maps are essentially variations of the draft maps for the council this evening, it should be possible to either select an existing map as is, or to start from one of the draft maps and make small adjustments to achieve a map that maximizes council support. To facilitate a manageable decision-making process, staff recommends one of these approaches. Following tonight's meeting, staff will publish the map council selects, so it will be posted for a week prior to your meeting of May 18th, at which point staff will request council approval of a resolution formally adopting that map and the first reading of the ordinance transitioning the city from at-large to district elections. No further map modifications can be made at that time, so any map the council wants to formally adopt next week must be selected this evening. And with that, I'll turn it over to redistricting partners for their presentation.
Hello, everybody. Mayor, city council members, members of the public, my name is Joe Armenta. I'm with a firm called Redistricting Partners. We are an organization that helps municipalities across the country with redistricting and the districting process. I will be joined, if I'm not already joined, by Paul Mitchell on our team too. He may be in the audience, so Paul, if you're there, just feel free to raise your hand. You'll get elevated to panelists. But today we're going to have our redistricting hearing on the draft maps that were elevated from the last meeting. I will go ahead and share my screen right now. Just 1 second. So we just have a quick presentation for you. In this one, we're just going to go over the Fair Maps Act criteria, just to give everybody a reminder of how we're drawing these district lines and what we're using to determine where the boundaries start and where the boundaries stop. We will talk about the draft maps that were elevated at the last council meeting, and then we'll talk about next steps from there. So just a reminder of our timeline here. I've seen a lot of y'all, and y'all have seen a lot of me in the last couple of months, but we began this process in February, and we've been holding pretty regular meetings at this point. We've held a couple of outreach workshops as well to let the community know about how to engage in the process and also how to use some of the tools that we had available. We are at the May 10th meeting. This is one of our final meetings here before the final vote, which is scheduled to take place on May 18th. We need to publish a map online within 7 days prior to that meeting. So tomorrow it would be the final day to post a map online that will be that you can take under consideration in a final vote. So we just put that date up there. So May 11th is when the final map will be posted online, followed by a May 18th vote on the final map. Just a review of the criteria. We are following rules laid out by the California Fair Maps Act. One is that the districts need to be relatively equal size within a 10% deviation, and that's the difference between the biggest district and the smallest district. That can't be more than 10%, so you'll hear the number 10% come up a lot during this meeting. The districts must be contiguous, so all parts of the district need to be touching each other. They need to maintain communities of interest, and we've done a lot of community outreach events over the last couple of months to receive feedback from the community. Also, there's a section for public comment during this meeting too, where you can tell us about your communities of interest, and we try to take that into consideration when we're deciding on the final map here. The city should also, the district line should also follow local municipal boundaries as well as much as possible. The city of West Sacramento, though, doesn't have official neighborhoods, but we try to take that into consideration when we're creating these district lines. And then the district should be compact, both in appearance and function. So we're not drawing squiggly lines all over the place, but these districts are relatively close together. The Fair Maps Act prohibits us using the addresses of incumbents or potential candidates for office when we're determining district lines. And then we also are prohibited from drawing lines to advantage or disadvantage a political party. So those are things that we don't take into consideration when we're drawing. Just a quick overview. We've done a lot of community outreach meetings. We believe in community-based districting here. Basically these lines will help determine how the city functions over the next year and who gets to vote in which elections. And we believe that the community should provide feedback in the process. So we've created a lot of tools and a lot of different opportunities for folks to give us feedback on the maps that we've drafted throughout this process. We've also had a tool called Districtor online, which is still up and is still available, and we're still taking submissions. But this is a tool that allows the community to draw both their community, but also propose potential district maps to us. This is available on the City of West Sacramento's website. Again, on the front page of the City of West Sacramento's website, you'll see a link to the districting webpage. And from there, you have all these helpful links on tools that are available, but also past information that's been presented to the council and made available to the public. So every map that we get through our tools too, we've been converting it over into what we call atlases, which are just a packet of materials that showcases the district map, but also goes and shows you some of the demographics. We convert it into those atlases, and when we publish them on the city's districting website, that's where you can view them. And so we've been doing that throughout the process. I'm just going to hop though right into the maps that were elevated from the last meeting. There are 6 maps that were elevated, really 4, but I'll explain this when we go through one of the kind of set of maps that we have. But these have all been made available on the city's website. You can view them there. But I'm just going to go one by one through them and just highlight some of the decisions that were made. Just to note, though, each of these maps, which are available on the website, they're in atlas form, and basically they go district by district too, and they show you the demographics and some of the population statistics in these packets. And all of them are available on the city's website. So the first map that we're going to review here is Draft Plan 2. Draft Plan 2 was created by us, the consultants. This was at the pretty much the beginning of the process after we heard some public feedback. At the beginning of the process, we created this map just based on what we heard. This was one of the options that was proposed, and this map was elevated to the council, by the council, sorry, in the last meeting. So this is Draft Plan 2. And one thing we're looking at in all these plans is the population deviation. Remember, that can't be over 10%. And so this one, we're at 6.8. So Draft Plan 2, we've gone over it a few times in prior meetings, so I won't delve too deeply into it. But Draft Plan 2 was elevated last time. The next map we have is Draft Plan 4A. Let me look at my notes here just so I get the numbers right. But Draft Plan 4A was very similar to a publicly submitted map that was very similar to another publicly submitted map that we call Draft Plan 4. This draft map was Draft Plan 12465. We were directed to rename it to Draft Plan 4A, just to make it easier for everyone to understand. But this map, basically, it cleaned up a lot of this area in the last Draft Plan 4, and used a street right here to divide the districts in the north. And then it had some changes too in the south, but just very minor changes. It is called Draft Plan 4 now. And then if we look at the total population deviation of it, we're at 9.1%. So within the 10% deviation. And then we have Draft Plan 6. This was a publicly submitted map that has been in here for a couple meetings now, but this one was elevated from the last meeting for further consideration by the council. This draft plan, again, was submitted by the public. It was Draft Plan Public Submitted Map 121618. And again, the council decided to elevate this to call it Draft Plan 6 and to list it on our website as the current considered maps. So there's this map. The total deviation of it is 7.9%. And then we have the Draft Plan 9 series. Draft Plan 9 is, you'll see Draft Plan 9A, 9B, 9C in this one. And basically the next three plans were all based on public submission map 123820. This was a map that was submitted by the public. The council elevated it. There was an issue with this map, though, which was that it was outside of the allowable population deviation. It was over the 10%. And so the council directed us to make a few changes to this map and propose different options for what could be compliant for compliance reasons. So what we did was basically we renamed it Draft Plan 9, and then we were providing you with 3 different options that lower that population deviation to 10%. Additionally, the council also directed us to cross the freeway right here and move this District 3 boundary up to, I believe that's Capitol Avenue right there. So we just did that small little change right there. But then we looked at different options for how to balance out the populations really in these southern districts. One of these was overpopulated and one was quite under. So in Draft Plan A, the way we do this is we expanded District 4 into District 3, and we did so in the southern area right here. And basically we use Otis, I believe it's Otis Avenue Otis Avenue as the dividing line between Districts 3 and 4. And what that did was it added populations into District 4, it took away populations from District 3, and then we ended up with 4.7% total deviation. So significantly lowered the deviation to below 10%, and now it is it would be something that would be compliant with the relatively equal size population criteria. So that's Draft Plan 9A. Draft Plan 9B is, again, the goal was kind of the same, expand this district up to what looks like Capitol Avenue, but just look at different options for how to balance the districts. In this one, we crossed the Linden Road, kind of Linden Loop area, and we just added a few census blocks in this direction. And really the reason I chose this one too was because these census blocks over here was because it maintained continuity too. In District 3, sometimes if you grab a few of these census blocks over here, the streets don't really line up and they wouldn't be contiguous anymore. But basically, again, I just grabbed enough population to get it under 10%. And you can see with it, we're at 9.7% deviation. So pretty close to 10%, but within the 10%, the allowable 10% range. So again, draft plan, what 9B does is it takes a little bit of the Linden Loop area and kind of shifts the population around there. And then we have draft plan 9C. Draft plan 9C is, again, expanding District 3 up to Capitol Avenue. But then what we do is we actually cross the channel here and we grab some of the population around the State Streets area. I believe we use 17th Street here as kind of the dividing line between the districts. And what you can see with this one is that we are at 9.6% total population deviation. So again, within that 10%. So those were the draft maps that were elevated by the City Council during the last meeting. Again, the council can direct us to make some changes to these ones as well. We could line live draw with you all just to tell us if there's small changes you want to make. We can do that, but at this point, the council really should be considering which map has the majority of approval of the council and which one could potentially be passed as the final map. With that said, none of these maps I presented to you have to be the final map. All that is required is that the final map has to be published tomorrow. So if there's a public submission today that you would like to move forward for the final vote, you can still do that. Again, we can make some minor tweaks and changes to some of these maps as well while we're live with you all, just to accommodate everything before we publish it as the final map tomorrow. You know, if we are making live changes, I would rather us work off one map than try to do it to all 6 maps just for the sake of time. You know, if there is a map that doesn't seem to have the majority of approval on the council, you should probably start weeding it out at this point. And we shouldn't try to make little tweaks to it if it's just not going to be passed. That's you know, moving forward, I think we're at the point right now though where we need to start making some decisions and move forward with a map by the end of this meeting that could be voted on in time for the May 18th meeting. So again, it just needs to be published tomorrow. And then I do have a quick slide on the sequencing of elections. It is finally time to start talking about that. Basically, once you choose a final map to move forward, you'll have to direct us and let the county registrar know which districts are up in which years. And so you will need to both number the districts, but also sequence them and basically tell us which ones are going to be up in, you know, 2022 and 2024 and 2026. So that will be the next step of the process. Really, though, this decision is at your discretion. We don't really provide too much technical expertise for this. This is what you all think is best for the city of West Sacramento. And so we kind of take the backseat on that, and you're mostly directing us on how you would move forward with the sequence. We, of course, are here to answer questions that you may have and to help you understand the process. So feel free to ask us questions. But again, this would be working off of what would potentially be the final map. And yeah, that's all I have in terms of the presentation portion. We did receive some public maps, so I do want to go through that just because we've been providing equal time to every public map that has been given to us at this point. So just give me 1 second. See if we can load this up here. There we go. So one map that has been submitted and that was submitted that will be talked about at greater length by Mr. Rafferty, as John mentioned, is the equity map. This is the map that was submitted by Mr. Rafferty. And I just want to display it for you all here. just so you can get a sense. What it appears to me, but I'll give Mr. Rafferty more time to actually talk about it, is that it builds off of some of the 9 series maps and makes some changes off that to accommodate the northern areas. But additionally, you know, it does change some of the southern. But again, I'll give Mr. Rafferty time to discuss some of the decisions that he made with this map. I will tell you, though, that it is within the 10% population deviation. It looks like we're at 8.1%. Smallest district is 4.2% under deviation, under the ideal population, and the biggest district is 3.9% over. So that amounts to 8.1. So within the 10% range. So that is the equity, what is being called the equity map. We did get a lot of submissions regarding the rivers. And so first I wanted to show you something that was submitted to us that just shows the community planning portion of the rivers process, kind of what's planned out. Just overlaid with a Google map. This is what they have outlined. So this would be what is considered kind of the rivers area. We did in some of in the 9 series, we did kind of split the rivers, and I'm happy to go into that when we following the public discussion part. But basically, there's a few parts of the rivers that we unintentionally left out, or that there's a little census issue that we can't totally include it in. But again, I'm happy to go further into that discussion when we get to the portion with the council members. But really the next set of maps, I bring that up now, is because the next set of maps is really trying to, before I get to that, this is another public submission. This is public submission 125434. This looks very similar to our map 9A. They were trying to balance out the population from the publicly submitted map that we discussed at the last meeting that was over the 10% deviation. It looks like they did it with this area over here like we did in 9A. But moving back to the rivers discussion, is that somebody submitted a lot of maps converting the elevated maps to include all of the rivers into their area. And what we're looking at is basically this area in the northern part. And again, I'm happy to go further into discussion with this during council kind of deliberations after the public comment. And then there's a couple of census blocks over here that are kind of, so rather than kind of go through each of these individually, I'm just going to kind of click through very quickly some of these areas. This does shift a lot of population around. And so in some of the maps, they try to correct it with this Linden Circle area. So basically the differences in this map that I just want to highlight are this area over here, this area around the rivers, and then this area around Linden Circle. And again, just to kind of quickly go through all these maps that were submitted, that's kind of what they're juggling here, is up here, around here, and then around this area. So we received a lot of maps regarding this river area, potentially drawn by the same individual, just going through each of our draft maps and fixing it in their mind. So just again, the spirit of what they're telling us is in this area up here around kind of Broderick and around Linden Circle, they're making changes. So I just kind of want to quickly click through these. This is the 4A ones. And then this is one not relating to rivers that was submitted. This is just a map that was submitted by the public. This is 127657. This map, though, didn't assign what looks like the Bridgeway Lakes area to a district, or is that the Bridgeway Isles? Yeah, this is the Bridgeway Island area into a district. So it's missing a big chunk of the city, essentially. So, but this is just something that somebody submitted. Okay. So that's a review of the public maps. That is our presentation, and I'm happy to give the floor back to you, Mayor, and then I'll be around for questions and additional.
Thank you, Joe. Do you have any additional thoughts, John, before we
No, I did not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Paul, did you want to add anything before we go to the council this time?
No, I'm just here to help with any questions that you might have at some point if I can be helpful, but I have full confidence in Joe. He's been working really hard on this, so thanks.
Okay, all right. Bring it back to council. Do you have any questions, comments, some suggestions that we've heard today? They take that into consideration at some point. Just wanted to bring it back to council. I don't see any hands up. I think everybody is.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
we could probably go ahead to, at least I suggest public comment, and then we'll come back. I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you, Chris. All right, we will, with that, I'll move it over to public comment. So, Madam Clerk, are there any requests? Actually, there is one request I think we should start off with, Mr. Rafferty. And I believe he's here.
Yes, ma'am.
He is. Okay, good. Mr. Rafferty, please.
Mr. Rafferty, would you like to provide your comment?
Thank you. Good afternoon or good evening. Yes, I think I need to start out just kind of recalibrating people's expectations a little bit. You overstayed the safe harbor. You overstayed the safe harbor for about 2 years. And what's unusual about that is that the former mayor was very involved in directing the statistical consultant in ways that were not appropriate. So you're in violation of the California Voting Rights Act. This is a remedial process. So even though I agree with one possible caveat, the notion that all these maps are legally compliant, they're not all adequate remedies for the CVRA violation. And just to set your expectations a little bit better, there is no case in the history of the CVRA where someone has violated the CVRA, not complied within the safe harbor, and gotten either the map they wanted, or there's always been an extra penalty, if you will, like a redistricting commission, or increasing the size of the board, or having a special election, or a mid-census redistricting. There's always been an extra. So in this case, I didn't really think it was necessary because of two facts about West Sacramento. First of all, for the first time in history, your two northern members, which is really the remedial focus, were already in the presidential. So I didn't foresee any sequencing problems. And also, for the first time ever, there was pretty good distribution of where the incumbents live. So this wasn't the usual slugfest that has happened when everybody lives in the same neighborhood. So I thought that it was appropriate to try to let the process work out and listen to the public. And the one caveat I want to say that I don't think I'm completely in sync with the demographer is on population variation, it's not a budget or a safe harbor. Less is better. And if you're going to use that population variation, you need to have a good reason, like straightening a boundary, or not splitting a neighborhood, or most importantly, making the remedial district as coherent, cohesive as possible, which often means making it a little bit smaller. So from that standpoint, I thought everything was going swimmingly until we had the chamber map. And the chamber map involved underpopulating the very whitest neighborhood quadrant of the city, the so-called rural area, which is only 2% Black compared to 8% of the rest of the district, half of the Latino population. And the daughters of that only overpopulate that very privileged, influential area by 2% in 9A, 6% in 9B, and 4% in 9C. But they should be underpopulating the North, because that's the focus of the remedy. They should not be giving people who've always controlled all the decisions more influence than the rest of the city. So I think those maps are fatally flawed. And I would add into that category map 4, because map 4, I don't see as often. People don't like gerrymandering, but they really don't like reverse gerrymandering. And we saw it was kind of odd in your school district, where at the last minute, somebody wanted to take out another trustee. And it happened to be the trustee who voted against going to district. And I just stand up and say, don't do that. That will make people feel really bad about the process. So I would disqualify those 4 maps on that grounds as well. But when you look at every other district that has looked at your city, the Board of Supervisors, the school district, they've all understand something that I think is very fundamental about the North. And that is that there is Bright, Roderick, Lighthouse. That is one community. That is the far north. That is the most Latino area. And then there's kind of a mid-city. And as far as I'm concerned, everything north of the freeway is in the north. Everything south of the ship channel is in the south. And the populated area is really in the middle is what Old Sacramento. By the way, there is an official neighborhood map. I've always used it. It's dated June 2010. I guess that explains where we got map 4 and map 9 from. But in any event, this Old Sacramento or Westmore Oaks, State Streets area is kind of the middle. So I think those were kind of the building blocks. I heard from several people saying this mid-city area is not well represented. So it seems to me logical to make one highly remedial area and then this mid-city area, which gets about 30% Latino CVAP. After the chamber map, I did put in the equity map. I hope not to do that, but it's out there for you. Map 6 is okay too on all those criteria. So, I mean, I think that's what you have to look at is, do you really want to defend that this is an adequate remedy in court? I don't think I think you have options that avoid that entirely. It's been kind of conflated into this, which was also not my expectation. But I think a really important part of the remedy is a 4-year mayor, with everybody in the city giving that mayor a mandate in the presidential election, because his or her job very different. I don't think we had a mayor who basically slated everything and controlled the makeup of the entire council. I think you want to have, it's the city's decision. I want to hear other opinions, but to have a mayor with a different skill set that is the presiding officer and takes that seriously, is a spokesman, has sets an overall agenda, and is held accountable to the people for a very different job than being a representative, I think is an important part of the remedy. So those are my thoughts. I think your demographer's done a great job. I did want to point out in staff reports, it says a few things like, does a community of interest want to have more than one representative? That's not legally compliant. And do you think that a district is too small or too big? You can't be too compact. So but I think that your demographer has kind of struck what the basic requirements are, but you have to layer on what do we need to do to make sure that the North, the Latino community that has traditionally been underrepresented, that going forward has equal influence. Because that's the test the court has to apply, overcome the presumption that something has to be done because of the breach of the safe harbor. So I would hope we come out and have a map that everyone can support, and that this is all, as it has been so far in our first court appearance, a very congenial and agreeable outcome. So I hope that leaves some guidance, and I'm very pleased with the potential here for a good result. So thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Carlos Acala. Just one moment, please. Some trouble with my mouse. Mr. Akala, would you like to provide your comment? Mr. Alcala? I'm going to move on to the next speaker and we'll come back to Mr. Alcala. Timothy Allen?
Yes, hello?
Yes, sir. You may provide your comment at this time.
Yes, I would just give a moment to introduce myself. My name is Timothy Lee Allen. I'm a former member of the United States Armed Services, the United States Army. As 11 Charlie Infantryman, I trained in Fort Benning, Georgia, Charlie Company 198th Brigade. The reason why I'm saying this is because I don't accept gerrymandering. I personally support map 2 and 6 because I don't want anyone in Bright anyone in. Basically, my thing is that I want Broderick and Bright to be this. I want them to be together. I do not want them to be separated, and I do not want Southport representing Broderick and Bright. You know, I've been living here all my life. I pay, I pay thousands of dollars in tax. Okay, I pay thousands in dollars in taxes for someone else to represent what I want. Okay, no, I pay thousands of dollars in taxes to be represented. No taxation without representation. Our country fought a war over this. Okay, taxation without representation. I do not vote for kings. I do not vote for monarchs, and I will not vote for maps. And I implore the city council to not vote for maps that allow dictators to come into office, to allow loopholes in the system. Period. Okay, this is not just a map for the district. This is a map for the people. Okay, and dependent on how you guys vote, the city council members and the mayor will reflect not only Yolo County's vote, but every vote, every single vote in the county for the foreseeable future. And I implore everyone in my community to act because this is very important. This vote is very important for representation and just general, So with that, I yield back.
Madam Mayor,
Mr.
may I say
Akala?
something? Mr. Alcala is here, but his microphone isn't working, so I'm going to allow him to use this. One moment, please.
Hi, I'm the president of the Dolores Huerta Latino Democratic Club in Broderick and Bright. We definitely favor the equity map and map 6. We will fight against all the other maps that are discriminating against the North, that are splitting Broderick and Bright. We know that the supervisors kept Broderick and Bright as one community. The school district kept us as one community. The splitting of Broderick and Bright is a deliberate violation of the Fair Maps Act, and we are going to challenge it. You cannot draw maps for political reasons. The other maps, especially 9A, B, and C, were drawn by the Chamber of Commerce for purposes of protecting Ms. Orozco and Mr. Ledesma. That is a violation of the act. We will go to court to challenge that. We're not going to allow it to happen. You know that Broderick and Bright have always been a single community. This is the first time in history that they're splitting it up, and it is for a very political reason. You better be prepared to defend everything you're doing in court because it's wrong, and the people of the North are not going to take it. We want fairness. We want equity. We started this process in order to get fair elections. You're not going to go through this process and give us crap. You're not going to go through the process and use it for political reasons to split the North. It is not right. It violates the community of interest that are the subject of the act. the criteria of the act are not being followed. That's aside from the Fair Maps Act that is also not being followed. The fact is that the children in the north go to one school, elementary. They go to one school for middle school. We go to the same churches in the north. We have a community, not only in every respect. We attend the same places at Bright Park, and you guys are going to split us up? No way. That isn't why we brought this lawsuit. That isn't why we're here. You better be prepared to spend a lot more money than you've spent so far if you're going to do all your illegal, unlawful actions to the north. We're not going to have it. By the way, thank you for letting me speak. I appreciate it.
Our next speaker is Maria Grijalva. Ms. Grijalva?
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I am the representative of the Dolores Huerta Democratic Club over at the Yolo County Central Committee. And so I wanted to remind everybody that the purpose of the California Voting Rights Act is to create a remedial district for protected classes, i.e. Latinos and Blacks. And non-Black, non-Latinos, such as whites and Asians, are not protected classes because they are overrepresented. The CVRA was not enacted to serve business interests over protected classes, nor was it created to protect incumbents. My apologies for attempting to protect our community leader that is also an incumbent at our last meeting. Adopting a map that serves the interest of the overprotected classes is unlawful, unethical, immoral, and not fair. It is not fair to the protected classes because it denies the intent of the law, which is to have an equal political voice at the table. It is also not fair to the privileged class because in the end, everyone loses when people of color are underserved, end up in prison, and then are released only to commit more crimes in affluent neighborhoods. The lawful maps are drawn for the purpose of keeping together communities of interest. West Sacramento does not have a business district. Maybe we have a hotel district, but we don't have a business district. Scott Rafferty's map 2 and map 6 serve this purpose. I now understand the fierce reaction to map 2 because it places 2 council members in the same district, and that is Irina Orozco and Christopher Ledesma. Map 6 are illegal and subject to a legal challenge, as you've heard, and we will not tolerate this maneuver. It goes against the CVRA demographic requirement. The targeted community of interest is called Broderick and Bright, not business. This community of interest attend the same church, Holy Cross, the same schools, the same middle schools, elementary schools, same grocery store, Arteagas, the same park, Bright Park, and have coexisted since the foundation of this city. This community of interest is represented by the maps in the county supervisor map, the city map, the county, school district. So breaking up Broderick and Bright is breaking up a community of interest that was historically attacked also by a gang injunction. Let us not forget that. And so map 9 plus unlawfully underpopulates the most affluent areas. Let us not forget that. And this is a historically cohesive neighborhood of interest. And so the Broderick and Bright neighborhood is in a single district in the Washington Unified School District map also. And so thank you for this moment to speak.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Vanessa Castro. Ms. Castro?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good evening. I just wanted to say thank you to the council. Thank you to Madam Mayor Guerrero and everybody else, the general public. My name is Vanessa Castro. I am a fourth generation resident of the Broderick area. My great grandmother actually was one of the original owners, and she has the sole home still standing on, I believe it's B Street or 6th Street right there where the train tracks are, where Burgers and Brew is. So I have a different perspective and opinion on the maps that were laid out there for us to view and see. I kind of have a personal interest for my community. I just my hopes are that the district maps, the one that you guys choose to adopt, that it's fairly, I guess, thoroughly and fairly picked out for us. There's never been a time in the history that I've lived here, or all the way to my great grandmother, where Old Broderick, where Burgers and Brew is, all the way to the Bright and Yolo, where the Mecca Club is at the very end, that we've ever been divided or split up. And it's not just the Latino community, it's also a Russian community that's been here as long as I have been, and even Asian, the Asian community. I literally probably have a family member on each street, starting from the Black Bridge all the way to the Mecca Club, every single street. These are people that we need to keep together, because there are some community members that we share daycare providers. We share the Spanish speaking community outreach for each other. So my hope and my public comment, I hope you take this into consideration, is to, at the very least, allow us to stay together and not divide us as for a community as a whole. So I appreciate your time. And one last thing, I know something that's very big and huge on my heart. And by the time my son, who goes to Elkhorn Elementary, is 18 years old, these maps, that's how long you guys are going to have these maps hold for. So I appreciate your time and consideration, and thank you and good evening.
Our next speaker is Pedro Cisneros. Mr. Cisneros?
Hello, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hi, I am a resident in on Evergreen Avenue. And so I'm kind of right on the district that's going to be split there. And I am actually in favor of having representation on both sides of West Cap. I think that would be good for, because what they do all the way on the other side of West Cap is going to affect us. And ultimately, I am a first-time homeowner here. And one of the reasons that I did choose this neighborhood was because it's one of the older neighborhoods in town. Both of my neighbors have been there 40 plus years. And I've realized that all of my other neighbors are either in a similar situation where they've been there for multiple decades or are young families like myself. And, I want to start a family there. And so I am Latino, and, I'm not in the Northern District where there's a little more representation. But I think we have plenty of representation there as well with our Latino population. And so I am here to show support for MAP 9A.
Thank you.
That is all. Thank you for the time.
Our next speaker is Douglas Gibson. Mr. Gibson?
Okay, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, thank you for hearing me. My name is Douglas Gibson. I'm a longtime resident of Bridgeway Island, having lived there with my wife for 20 years. And I'm here to express my support for MAP 9A. I like the map because the criteria used for developing it seems sound and logical. And it proposes districts that appear cohesive that seem to have developed together and that have shared historical backgrounds. And to me, it therefore seems logical in its proposed districting of the district. Moreover, as somebody who lives in the Southport area, it is good to see that the map shows Bridgeway Island and Bridgeway Lakes in the same district. These are neighborhoods that have a lot in common. They were built almost at the same time and share recreational and other facilities. I'm therefore urging that you consider selecting map 9A for districting the city. Thank you so much for your time.
Our next speaker is Andrea Rodriguez-Boncleve. Andrea?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Hi, my name is Andrea Rodriguez-Boncleve. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak and taking the time to hear all the public comments for item number 2 tonight. My husband and I are residents of West Sacramento and own our house in State Street. We've been homeowners and residents there in that neighborhood since 2015. It's very important for City Council to adopt map 9A. One thing I really appreciate about map 9A is the fact that the districts follow historic neighborhoods. I've looked over all the maps that were proposed and elevated by City Council, and I truly believe that map 9A best represents and maintains not only the state streets, but Riverfront and Planned Pioneers Bluff together. I strongly believe that this is important to keep these areas together. As I once mentioned, it's a historic neighborhood and splitting them would not be beneficial. One of the many reasons we moved to West Sacramento was that it's a historic area. We really fell in love with the charm of it. This neighborhood, along with the Bridge District, Riverfront, and the Planned Pioneer Bluff, is our home and it's our neighborhood. It's the source of entertainment for my husband and I, where we walk or bike over to the Bridge District and enjoy, a nice cold beer at the Drake, or a baseball game, or the bike trail. It's where we will in the future raise our family as well. And it's important for my husband and I to have input into those growing areas that we consider our home in our neighborhood, and that we have considered it since moving to West Sacramento, and we'll continue to think of that as our neighborhood and our home. Therefore, I believe that map 9A best represents my neighborhood. And I want to thank you again for your time, and please adopt map 9A as it does not split my neighborhood in half as other maps would. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Anna Domek. Ms. Domek?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I know you all have a difficult decision ahead of you. Sometimes studying all the available maps, I'm calling in support of map 4A. No map is perfect, but I think map 4A makes the most sense for my neighborhood in the city. If small adjustments need to be made, makes sure that certain neighborhoods, such as the rivers, if there needs to be tweaks to the map to allow the rivers to stay whole, I think that can easily be done to this map. The reason I support this map is that map 4A creates 2 districts, each in the north and the south. Given the traditional divides in our city between the north and the south, this seems to provide the most fair representation for all. Further, it is divided along boundaries that make sense geographically and clearly connected through roads. As a Stonegate resident, I can best speak to my neighborhood. I'm pleased that this map keeps Stonegate together and joined in other areas with which our community has the most in common. Some of the other maps split my areas up or don't do that. When I look at this map, it makes sense. Further, this map fairly retains room for growth in districts likely to increase in population in the next decade. It also takes equity into account and creates 2 larger Latino districts and does not cram minority populations into one district and correspondingly dilute any community's voting power. And it also doesn't isolate areas less likely to vote. Thank you. And that's the end of my comment.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Maria Garcia. Ms. Garcia?
Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es María García. Gracias por la oportunidad de hablar. Representando a más de 100 familias del área norte de West Sacramento, pedimos el mapa 6 o el mapa 2. Las familias del área norte de West Sacramento no quieren ser divididas y piden que los mapas 6 y el 2 sean uno de los que escojan. Nosotros estamos juntos, lo que viene siendo en la comunidad de nuestras iglesias, y queremos seguir con esa misma posición de seguir comunicándonos y seguir estando juntos en las cosas que están pasando en West Sacramento. Ya basta de ignorarnos. Nosotros somos la comunidad latina que estamos en el área norte. Gracias.
Our next speaker is Alfred Melbourne. Mr. Melbourne?
Hello. Yes, my name is Alfred Melbourne, and I'm born and raised here in Broderick, California. Happen to reside in the North area. And I'd like to thank Mr. Rafferty for his synopsis and echo some of his thoughts and concerns when it comes to the division of a city or parts of the city that have been largely underserved and represented, and definitely have a lot of concerns when it comes to this whole process, or ideas even too. Is still, I know that this is a really important time for us in the city of West Sacramento as we're considering this redistricting, and hearing a lot of the folks, Carlos and Timothy, speak before me. It appears that there's going to be a lot of people that aren't going to be in agreement with splitting of Broderick and Bright with good reason, because for a long time this community has kind of stuck together, and as Maria Grijalva stated, experienced a gang injunction, creating a safety net around a community that was largely underrepresented and became highly over-policed, and a school-to-prison pipeline in place, highly impacting our youth generations, where we should have been throwing resources and tools and services towards our youth. You know, we were over-criminalizing them and locking them up and thinking that was going to be a better answer. Today, we're in a position to create changes in our community and add more representation to this side of the town where it is highly needed. As we can see this day, the state of Sacramento Avenue and the lack of a pool in this area, recreational and services for the youth in this side of town. It's very clear to us that West Sacramento needs to, the mayor, the city council, really look at the situation we have here. And we know that some things get out of our hand, but not to waste the resources that we can spend other areas, bringing folks together so that we can be a part of the conversation and continue to see our city or North area continue to grow at a pace that's going to be building up the economic structure over here, programming and resources for this side of town. So there's a lot of things going on here. I definitely appreciate the opportunity to speak. Working with impacted youth in our community, high promise, at potential youth, know that we have a lot of work to do to make sure that our city council is representing us and hearing what we have to say. So I want to thank everybody for hearing me, and thank you all for the work you guys are doing. Everyone have a good night.
Next speaker is Mary Ann. Mary Ann, would you like to provide your comment?
Yes, thank you. Hi, my name is Mary Ann Estes. I have been long-term resident of Broderick for over 50 years. I'm a graduate of Washington High School, so I've lived here. I'm a homeowner, went to school here, raised my son here. I have some roots here. I submitted written comments, but I also want to offer some clarity about my comments. I'm asking that the council adopt a map that creates 2 council members for the North area. Given the cultural diversity and the economic needs of our area, I feel it's imperative that we have 2 representatives for the North side. Since that was my focus, I wanted to let you know that I would be happy with any of the maps that you all want to adopt. I did not spend time assessing the Southport area or anything like that, because my concern was mostly the north area. So that's why, I don't really care which map, as long as it creates two voting council members for the north area. As you come to consensus, I hope you give consideration to folks who actually live in the north area, and that you not get distracted by threats of litigation or political retaliation. Ironically, our council is extremely diverse. And before you even engage in this process, and you were all elected, the irony is our diversity of our council, you were all elected through at-large elections. So that's just, I just have to have that settle in my brain about what we're trying to solve. I just want two separate voices up here, since I can no longer have 5 people that I can hold accountable. I am now limited to 1. That's why I want 2, because I want to make sure that everybody is, has an interest in what we do in the north area. And I fear that, cutting us off in districts is going to dilute that. So it's important then, if we're going to do this and we have to go this route for, whatever reason, that we have 2 areas representing us in the north side. So that's my recommendation. Like I said, I'm not wedded to the map. I just want those 2 representatives. So thank you very much and have a good evening.
Our next speaker is Daniel Ramos. One moment. Mr. Ramos?
Good evening. I hope you can hear me. Dan Ramos, and I want to say good evening to Madam Mayor and our City Council. Thank you for bringing this process along. I know it's been a long journey, and I really appreciate all the work in terms of the consultant and the staff in putting this together. I just wanted to share my support for map 9A, and it's not the chamber map. I call it the Coalition for Incorporation map. It's the least political, and it's the best geographical map we can have. And I want to give a little background on this. I've been involved in this community for over 60 years, both politically and obviously in business, and proud graduate of James Marshall High School. But back when we started the incorporation drive back in 1985, this is before we even incorporated, I was really happy to be part of that coalition, which included many of our proud Broderick and Bright members, from Dorothy Domino to Paul Carney. It was just a great, and our whole strategy for Incorporation West Sacramento was to unite the entire community, Broderick, Bright, and West Sacramento. I'm very dismayed with the equity map, because it's going back to exactly what we didn't want to do with incorporation. It's always been about a united West Sacramento, not doing stratifying these areas and concentrating, the Latino community is our whole community. Our council is very diverse and sees it. I don't understand why that's important. That shouldn't be. We are all equal. We all need to share in the same. I think this community's done an excellent job of being shown a mirror of ourselves. So I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of background. That was a big thing for incorporation. It was a big thing when we united the high school into one high school, so everyone was together. It always has been united West Sacramento, not something that's cut up. So I really believe that the Coalition for Incorporation map, 9A, is the perfect map for our community to go forward with. Thank you very much.
We have no hands raised, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, for taking all those public comments. We'll close the public comment and bring it back to council. And at this point, I think our direction is to narrow it down to one map, have the flexibility to look at that, at least try to narrow it down from the map that we have, to choose that one map, and then if there is some modifications to, provide that direction. And then once we provide that direction, we will take about a 10-minute break, so that the redistricting partners, Joe and Paul, will prepare a final map, and then we will come back and take a look to make sure it reflects the decision we made. And what I mean by coming back, I just mean, they'll need some time to prepare that map. Just go from there, see where we're at, once we take a look at that map and make a decision.
Madam Mayor? Oh,
Yes.
I'm sorry. It looks like we still have 3 hands up. I don't know if those are remaining hands. I
did those hands. I was looking. I think I was with the clerk. I'm not seeing any additional.
Okay, I just,
They must have popped up after. I didn't see them on before. Madam Clerk, did I miss I was tracking with you. I didn't see those two hands up.
They came up as we reconvened. If you would like to take those comments, we can do that. It's up to you.
Okay, I will open it up to public comment again, then we'll take those two comments and then we will wrap it up. All right.
Mr. Hargrove, would you like to provide your comment?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. Sorry about that. I didn't notice my hand wasn't up until the last moment. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight, going through this whole process. I've been at every single meeting during this process except for one. Map 9A is the one that I hope that you will adopt tonight or some variant thereof. Map 9A is not the chamber map. It's the map that I drew after going to every single one of these meetings. It's a map that brought in a lot of the information I had from serving on the Yolo County Redistricting Commission and a lot of the information that I had been gathering over the years for the Neighborhood Map Project. Map 9A serves all neighborhoods and it helps traditionally underrepresented neighborhoods increase their voices on the council. You know that to be true. Map 9A will allow 2 people to serve north of the railroad track, doubling the number of representatives that they could potentially have on the council under the other map. There's many ways to draw the map. 9A addresses antiquated political divisions in the city while respecting historical and new neighborhoods alike. Map 9A gives more prominent voice to traditionally politically underrepresented neighborhoods, which is what this whole process was supposed to be about. Let's create a new paradigm in West Sacramento. Let's choose a map that reflects West Sacramento as it is now. Let's erase old artificial divisions. Let's get more representation to the northern part of the city. Let's respect the demographics. Let's not perpetuate the major flaw of the at-large voting system we're getting rid of. Under your note on the demographics, it says MAP should avoid mixing high propensity voters into areas with historically low turnout. Well, that's exactly what the map that Scott Rafferty is asking you to adopt does. It mixes in high propensity voting areas with the historically low turnout areas in the north. It does not separate Broderick and Bright, and you all know that. It keeps Broderick and Bright together. 2 council members are better than 1. 9A automatically gives residents of the north 2 representatives with a stake in their success. Also, 2 county supervisors are better than 1. 9A overlaps more city council districts with both supervisors. It will allow us to engage both of our county supervisors in more city issues. So for these reasons, I really encourage the city council to take a look at map 9A or one of its variants, or even map 4, one of the maps that creates quarters in the city. Let's change the dynamic. Let's create a new history for the city of West Sacramento. Let's move forward. Thank you very much.
Our last speaker is the West Sacramento Chamber of Commerce.
Hi, good evening. Mayor Guerrero, Mayor Pro Tem Orozco, and respected council members Ledesma, Alcala, and Early for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Denise Domke. I'm a 20-year resident of West Sacramento and live off Linden in the Linden West neighborhood. I'm also the CEO of the West Sacramento Chamber of Commerce. And just to clarify, for the record, the Chamber did not draw a map. The Chamber did not submit a map. The Chamber reviewed maps submitted by the public. And the Chamber is here this evening to support map 9A and request its adoption as the final district map for City Council elections. Map 9A most closely represents the map previously supported by the Chamber. On behalf of that portion of our membership, the 261 member businesses of the Chamber that live in West Sacramento, own businesses or nonprofits in West Sacramento, thank you. Thank you to city staff for your remarkable work on this project. Thank you to the City Council for your focus and attention as you work through a challenging process. Thank you also for attempting to provide a platform for respectful civil discourse. And thank you for your commitment to hearing all the voices of our community. As residents of West Sacramento, the West Sacramento Chamber of Commerce appreciates your efforts and asks you to adopt MAP 9A. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Madam Clerk, for allowing the two public comments to speak, and bring it back to council again. Close the public comment and bring it back to council, and asking for any comments, thoughts, recommendations for the redistricting partners to take into consideration. Anybody gonna go first?
Madam Mayor, I may, I'll go ahead and go first. And first of all, thanks to the public for being so diligent throughout the process. It's been kind of I wasn't quite sure how the public would accept and engage in the conversation around the first ever district elections and looking at the city at how the boundaries should be shaped. But I'm for the most part proud of sort of how the community has responded. It's been mostly respectful, understanding. This isn't, I think somebody said it, that no map is going to be perfect. We're just too small a community to sort of get a line exactly right to where everyone's going to love it. This is why as elected official, we get, the lucky opportunity to make these choices, and knowing not everyone's going to like them. And that's just sort of how this process would go. But I appreciate the positive engagement that our community has mostly had in this and trying to find a way to delve towards goals that further the city overall. Because that's the way I've approached it. I've tried to approach it from what's best for West Sacramento. I've listened to the community and listened to the speakers involved in every session that we've had as a council. I also want to thank city staff for doing a really good job of sort of brokering the sort of information to us. Lots of people are trying to provide maps. I'm sorry, and also to Joe and the team at Redistricting Partners for continuing feeding us the information we need as we get it, certainly in trying to keep us abreast of sort of any happenings with the technology, which we learn and is really cool tools, and then B is around sort of where sort of the latest information fits into sort of the demographic requirements or the population requirements required in each. So you're kind of keeping us within the guardrails. So thank you for doing that. From my perspective, I started this conversation with the notion that, from trying to make the maps at the end of the day as simple and understandable as possible. I know there's a lot of passionate voices on this call today, and probably not on this call today, who've been paying attention to this process. But the truth is a large majority of our population isn't. They're home feeding kids. They're helping them do homework. They're doing work. They're doing whatever they have to do. And while local politics is one of the most impactful government work streams you could be involved with, we impact people's everyday lives. It's probably the least paid attention to in these types of arenas because it's just people don't have time, and that's okay. That's representative government's democracy, and we're here to represent as best we can our thoughts and trying to consider the entire population. And what I was trying to think about going into this process is, at the end of the day, people whether they're in my neighborhood, they're in the Ridgeway Island or Lakes neighborhood, or in the Pheasant Hollow neighborhood, or in the Arlington Oaks neighborhood, you can name all of them, all the way up north to Bright and Broderick and the Rivers or the Bridge District, newer neighborhoods. They're going to wake up one day and figure out they have to vote, and they're going to look at a map and say, this is okay. I get what they were trying to do here. And not all of it makes sense, but they understand it as closely as possible. That's the perspective that I tried to lay going forward. I understand the dynamics involved in sort of what we're trying to achieve, again, from the population standpoint, making sure standard deviation is within kind of the right requirements. But I'm more so wanting to make sure the public kind of can feel good about, at the end of the day, it kind of made sense that it's a simple map. And I started with the notion of trying to keep to geographical landmarks, trying to stay into quadrants of the city. I personally wanted to make sure my neighbors in the north, who I've represented for the past now 12 years as an at-large member, had a fair amount of representation going forward. Not just one person, but and a mayor, but 2 members and a mayor. I think that was a principle I articulated early on. I also listened to my neighbors around me who articulated very early to the consultants too. One of the first things we heard about keeping certain neighborhoods together, particularly in the Stonegate area, is one of the highlights that they kept reminding us of, is trying to keep Stonegate together. And I know I appreciate all the maps that were brought forward. And the one that I elevated to me on the first kind of go around was 4A. I'm kind of still thinking about that map and thinking feels like the closest thing to right that I can think of. It provides clear neighborhood delineations. It provides in the north one very large riverfront district for folks in the rivers in the Broderick area, where will be important areas as the new bridge lands, the one that the mayor is sitting in front of at the moment, will land in that area. And it'll be an important part of as it continues to develop. It'll have new neighborhoods, already has new neighborhoods developing in the Washington neighborhood and in the Bridge District, and it encapsulates some of the older neighborhoods in Old West Sac. And I think it's close to my friends of the chamber who have been advocating for the 9 series. But to me, that's an area where the opportunity is to kind of help to create this kind of northeast quadrant where the neighborhoods can come together and have one representative that has a similar interests, and because it's an area that will be growing quite a bit in the coming years. It also keeps the District 1, the right neighborhoods and into parts of Meadowdale and other areas together. So again, a separate voice for them. And it creates 2 districts in Southport, keeping Stonegate together, and frankly, Bridgeway Lakes and Bridgeway Islands together in the District 3. So it's one that I'm sort of thinking about continuing on going forward. I probably can do some tweaking. The thing I liked about the 9 series is it kept District 4, contained it with not going into Old West Sac. It consumed more of the Linden Loop, which frankly folks down the Linden area have more in common with, as it surrounds the Southport Town Center. It seems like an area of opportunity. But again, I'm kind of thinking along the lines of 4, as I'll put forward, as kind of still has my interest going forward. Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's my comments for today. If I can ask a real technical question of staff real fast, or Joe.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to go back to for a second. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention this up front. The rivers, and in those maps, the way I was looking at a Google Maps as you were talking through it, but it winds 4A captures, I think, much of the development, the rivers development coming down Lighthouse Drive and everything else. I think, but they wound up over to the riverfront basically along Bright Park and that area all the way towards Bright Park. And I think that's just, there's no households there, but is there a census tract there that it was grabbing? You're on mute, Joe.
Joe, are you speaking?
I'll just take that out. Yeah. So are you referring to this area or which area?
To the left, to the west. Yeah. So I think in some of the, I saw some of the new maps drawn by, I think it was Mr. Cummings. Is that right? From, but they were trying to get maps going. If you take the zoom back out a little bit along the riverfront, it kind of stretched out in his maps. And I don't know if there's any actual homes up there that belong to the rivers, but I think it may have been grabbing a census tract.
So the issue that we're having, this has happened to a few maps here, is there was a question one of, is this notch part of the rivers? Based on that development plan that we see, based on Google Maps, this is within the gated part of the rivers, this notch. The thing is that there's houses on this side of the street that are within the gated area. And then basically starting around here, there's 2 rows of houses. Half of them are in the gated area, half of them are in the more Broderick community. And so pretty much if you follow this perimeter right here, there are some houses along the side of it that are within the rivers. The issue though is the census block stretches from here, it curves around, and then it goes all the way down to the rivers and grabs some of this area. But basically it's a big census block that in order to grab these houses right here, you have to include the entire census block. And again, it takes houses that are on Carey Street, which is part of the Broderick community. I believe there's a school right here that it takes into. And then, it takes along the riverfront. I'm not entirely sure if these are houses right here or just kind of businesses or, infrastructure of some sort. But again, it's just a big census block that goes all the way down this way. Basically, in order to keep some of these houses that are along the perimeter of the rivers within the gated community, you have to take in the remaining part around here.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay. I figured it was because I noticed in the times I fiddled with a map, there was census block. You grab what you thought might be one block, and it turns out to be quite a bit of real estate. So, okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember McCall.
I favor District Map 6. And the reason I do is because I take into strong consideration, as I've said before, what the criteria that we have here, relatively equal in size, geographically and functionally contiguous, generally consistent with the, yes.
There's feedback coming. Is there somebody else with a pad on?
With the same building, Mayor. I'm actually at work. I'm at my office. One moment, and I'll see if I can go into another office.
Okay, thank you.
Or if they mute or turn it down, then
they have to turn it down. Yeah. They can hear you speak in the room.
Let me come into another office. Just a second.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. I think that should be the problem. Thank you.
It does.
Okay, thank you. So, I was saying, map 6 to me meets the criteria of relatively equal in size, geographically and functionally contiguous, generally consistent with existing neighborhoods and communities of interest, easily identifiable and understandable by residents, and compact. And that, to me, is map 6. Took into consideration what many individuals were saying about the different maps. And if there are neighborhoods that seems to have historical backgrounds, I know in the north, the Broderick and Bright area, have been, even with our school, they have always, experienced less recognition. I think the individuals in that area have often feel disenfranchised from the workings of policy making and decisions that were made not only on city council but even on school board before we had the single member districts there. When Maria Garcia spoke, I don't know how many people were able to understand. For those of us that speak Spanish, let me just go ahead and translate. She basically spoke with over 100 members of her community. She's an incredible community leader in the north. She and her husband are members of the school board there, and she has the confidence and trust of many individuals who are disenfranchised because they can't vote. You know, and this doesn't mean though that they shouldn't have a say. Their children attend our schools. Their children are citizens, and decisions that impact them, you know, are something that we should not dismiss. And they feel sometimes that they are dismissed. Maria mentioned, you know, many of our members up north go to the same schools. That means the children go to the same schools. Many of the people in the north go to the same churches. And it was brought up by several members that even our supervisorial district, that has stayed intact. I believe that the rivers should definitely be included in the north. I have friends in the rivers who I grew up with. So we seem to share a very strong historical background in that perception. And let me tell you, I believe also one of the other things that I noticed was with map 6, every one of these districts in map 6 actually has an industrial area. And I think that's something that also, you know, should be considered. I was going to mention that I liked map 2, and I thought that was the only map that was actually, you know, put out there by demographers, but it doesn't seem like the council leaned very much towards map 2. So I thought about which map to me met the criteria that we were looking. Map 6 was that map. There's only like a 7.9 deviation. And we've heard from other members of the community. I believe there was Miss Castro, who mentioned, you know, she has family that lives from, well, where Burgers and Brew in that area, all the way down to Mecca. I mean, these are very tight-knit communities. And I think that's something that really should be considered very heavily. You know, the North has often been disenfranchised, you know, from many processes. And I believe it's really important to keep the North together. Before I got on the school board, you know, we had a lot of the schools out there that weren't getting the attention they needed. It wasn't because we had bad school board members. It's just that the majority of the school board members all lived out in the Southport area. So people were sometimes just unaware of the things that were going on. And that's something that's very important, that we keep the North together, because people there do have context. They attend the same festivals. They share a commonality there. And when you look at the other districts, you know, I mean, we've all campaigned at one time or another. I mean, these neighborhoods seem to make a lot of sense in the way they're pulled together. For me, I think it's very easy to visualize that map 6 definitely has the most conformity with the criteria that the CVRA puts out there. So that would be my choice on a map. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. I'll call it Councilmember Early.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is definitely not an easy decision. We are impacting the community for at least another decade, right? Until the census data comes out again. And even then, the maps will likely be based on the maps we're putting into place right now. And so this definitely has weighed on me in regards to all of the community impact, the community input that we've gotten over the past couple of months, right? And leading up to this as well. I think I've been really transparent the whole time about what things that I've been hearing that from the community that I think are important. Largely, a lot of that is captured in map 4A for me, and so that is the map that I'm leaning toward right now. It is, as we heard Councilmember Ledesma say, keeping the Stonegate community together. It's keeping Bridgeway Island and Bridgeway Lakes together, which we heard that over and over again as well. But as I've said before, one of the things that is really important to me that we actually heard, I think, from one of the public comments was actually having two strong voices in the North, and really having to engage, particularly the Latinx community in the North. And for me, when I look at the data, that's what 4A does, is rather than creating a super majority district in which you have one voice, you actually have two voices that will speak for the North. And I think that's really important as we talk about splitting Southport into two. We also will hopefully be able to do the same with the North. And so for all the reasons that we've heard for the past couple of months, for the reasons I've said, right, over and over again, for me, this seems to be the map that captures almost everything, right? There's not going to be a perfect map, and I acknowledge that. We're just not going to be able to get it exactly perfect. But this seems to really hit on a lot of the key central points that we've heard over and over again from communities during this process.
Thank you, Councilmember Early. Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Orozco.
I'll keep my comments short because I've spoken a lot over the last several meetings, and my position has been made pretty clear. People's narratives have evolved over time to fit their political purposes, and this is, very much a political activity, but I'm not participating in any of that. For me, this is what's right for the city. It is about identifying all of the specific factors and trying to meet criteria. These maps were submitted by members of the public and we've seen several different iterations based on our comments and based on other people's personal interests. The only ever mention of anyone who was trying to, anyone that was personally identified as a council member with respect to the districting process had nothing to do with myself or Mr. Ledesma, but rather my colleague who resides in the rivers. And again, that's not what we're here to do. With that, I've expressed the interest in the rivers as it relates to the riverfront. It is an affluent district. It has had a history of affecting the ability for us to find resources for Bright Park. It has a wall that changes complexions in that particular community. It's while the argument, the narrative has been made that it's one community, it's a little less persuasive and disrupted by a barrier that exists. And so the maps that I have supported have been in the 9 series. 9A I saw, and I thought that it could, the interest of keeping the river front together was there. I liked the quadrant perspective. I liked that it tried to contain Bright and Broderick together. You have the Washington district, you have parts of the Michigan and Laurel Lane and the state streets together, and the state streets stay intact. The unfortunate, thing is that what I would like to see is the full rivers be included. I understood the discussion, and if there's any way to make sure that there's not stragglers in two districts. But if there's not, then we have to live with that. But with that said, the quadrant options that we have being either, for me, it'd be 9A would be the most superior out of the 9 series, but also looking at 4. And I mean, the 4 keeps the riverfront together. It doesn't, unfortunately, capture as much of the rivers, and grabs a little bit more of, the Broderick district, and it breaks up the state streets at the bottom. But I also recognize some of the benefits of that map in keeping certain communities intact. I mean, somebody's going to have to give. Unfortunately, the state streets, they're such a small, quaint, identifiable old West Sac community. It's heartbreaking for me to see that. But if for the sake of consensus, as we navigate this very difficult process, we have to choose a map today. And while I think that 9A is superior from my perspective, and for the reasons that I've argued, I could live with 4, as it does possess a lot of the same characteristics that I argued for in the 9 series. That's all. That's my comment.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Orozco. Councilmember Alcala.
Mayor, I think my biggest concern with draft map 4A, I'm not always going to be on the council, but I just feel that with this map, we're never going to have anyone north of Sacramento Avenue that can get elected. I guess that's my biggest problem with the map. Just look at the divide there. I mean,
is there a way, Joe, to bring in the map to look at the street location so that we can take a look at where Sacramento Avenue is located?
There is, just 1 second.
Okay.
Councilmember Akala, can I ask why you think that is?
because it definitely divides. It divides the area. I mean, most, with the exception maybe of the rivers, you have areas there that are more economically unable to maybe sustain. I mean, face it, running elections, even district elections, is difficult. So, I just feel that you will have less folks from those disenfranchised areas that I've talked about, with the way it's cut up right here, running, from the north of Sacramento Avenue. And that's just discussions I've had with different residents.
Well, and the only reason why I ask is because it looks like there's a pretty solid voting base there. And so are you talking just income disparity or not? I think that's the part that's throwing me.
I think that's a lot of it right there. With people that I've spoken with, council member, that has been the concern with District Map 4A from many of the people that I've spoken with.
That people won't be able to afford to rent. And the only reason why I ask is because immediately, right, I think of Elkhorn and I think of the folks that we saw running there, right? Well, exactly, right? You had folks from a person from Washington District that I would argue probably was, right, had more financial means. And then you had someone, and so I just, when I look at this, but when I look at it, I would actually argue that the data would support that not be the case, that looking at it at this, you would actually have a solid enough base that anyone could be a strong, if again, a smaller district, and also if they had the full support of the community.
Right. Still saying that when you divide that area, on Sacramento Avenue, you may have more people that would be um, capable of running on the north. Okay, so we have Sacramento Avenue. What I'm saying is, people from the north, it would be very hard, in my opinion, and what we've seen, to have these individuals actually be able to win a race against someone, let's say from, further south of the Sacramento Avenue line. And that's what my concern has been with the 4A map and people that I've spoken with. Those were some of the concerns that they had.
And I agree with that. I do see that the people in the north of Sacramento Avenue will have a very difficult time. I don't know where the consensus would be for them to draw on votes, but the riverfront on the Washington district is growing quickly. It's going to bring in new residents. It's going to have a bigger voting base, and the voting base, I think, that we're trying to generate by creating the district maps, and the map 6 was one that I preferred as well, because I think it preserved and broke up a little bit the Washington district. Well, it actually didn't break it up that much, but just a little bit, so that it allowed for those individuals in map in District 1 to have an opportunity to be able to get elected. Whereas if it was broken up into 2 districts, 1 and 2, that we have in front of us, it would really make it challenging for people like Vanessa Castro, for example, to be able to achieve an election in the future. And these are longstanding residents that I'm hearing that have been living there for generations. And we have newer people coming in along, because we're having a lot more housing built along the riverfront in the Washington, both in the Washington and Bridge District, which is combining those 2 districts. And I think that is that's the challenge I see with map 4A, whereas map 6 breaks it up so that you can have some representation in the north that reflects the history, and those that have lived there for quite a long time have representation. And that's why I'm supportive of map 6. I did look at the equity map. I did see some benefits to the equity map. And I also, with all due respect to the the supporters of map 9A, I looked at the data for those in the Latino voting population, and there is quite a difference compared to the other maps. I wanted to take a look at the voting among the Latino population, and the other map 9A was not the map that achieved some level of equal representation. It did give under 9A more, under one district compared to another. But I did want to allow for more equal representation. And that is what map 6 achieved, including the, generations of people that have lived in District 1 there. Also District 2, and they are, I think, well known to each other in each area. Each, District 1 has some characteristics that are different than District 2. Looking at the history around the State Streets, around Memorial Park. District 1 is around Bright Park. And then we have District 3, which is, taking a look at bringing those individuals who wanted to be closely together. And it gives an opportunity for them to stay together, where in District 4, the Ridgeway Lakes, that's going to be new growth in that area. They're all pretty much similar as far as their complexion and how they're going to be, sharing, as far as the schools, recreational activities that are out that, in not only now, but in the future, in the next 10 years. So that is the reason why I supported map 6 as well. But I'm hearing there's 2 maps here among council. There's 4A, 6, and just wanted to bring it back to council. Councilmember Orozco. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It was left hanging, Madam Mayor. Do you have any data that would support the claim that people above Sacramento Avenue would have less of a chance to get elected?
Yeah, they would be outvoted by the people in the north. If you look at the voting People in the north don't quite, north of Sacramento Avenue, the vote's not as strong as people on the south of Sacramento Avenue.
Do you have any data?
They would
that you can-
outvote.
Do you have any
What's the
data that
on
you
there?
can
Let
provide
me
for
see if
us
I can
that's a
find that.
source?
Yes, just a second. Let me see if I can find it.
And I think, Madam Mayor, you had mentioned that as well. What are your sources for that, making that?
John, didn't we get that information from you? I know I read it
I'm
somewhere.
happy to share this. We provided the council with
Who was the one?
kind of
Oh,
voter,
I'm sorry, Joe. Yeah.
voter
I'm sorry.
turnout. Looking at the past presidential election and looking at the voter turnout in it, and basically what we did here was we looked at the total amount of registered voters. We looked at the total amount of votes cast for any presidential candidate. So we're not looking at partisan data, just person voted for a presidential candidate, no matter what party. We just lumped them together into one vote. And then we looked at the, from there, we were able to determine, what the turnout was based on the district's registration. We looked at whether it was over or under the city's overall turnout. So the city turned out at 72.6%, and then whether the potential district is above or below that. And then we looked at what percent of the citywide vote it was, each district was. So, and Plan 4A, this is, I can zoom in so y'all can kind of see it. This is what we're looking at. I think the questions really are District 1 and Districts 2, right? Those are the northern districts. Let me confirm that though. 4A. Yeah, 1 and 2, these are the northern districts that you all are discussing. Basically, you have a district that turned out a very low turnout district, and then you have a district that overperformed the city's turnout. But each of them are representing about, this one represents 20% of the district's turnout. This one represents 23.2% of the city's turnout. I don't know if you want to compare that with other maps. 6 is right below it, but there is also 9A.
I don't understand, because isn't that the entire district? So doesn't that mean it's the rivers, it's above and below Sacramento, it's the Bridge District? Isn't that what that whole number mean? Number 2, or did you just take above Sacramento and below the rivers to get that number in map?
This is if the district were enacted as it were in each map.
Okay, so it's not like part of the district. Okay.
The question that the council is deliberating right now is, I'll go to 4A, and I don't want to. I'm not taking a position on either one, but on this issue, I feel like to explain it is, is it better to include kind of these areas together or to separate these areas? One idea would be if you separate.
I actually don't think that was the question we had, Joe. That wasn't the question we had. What council member or Madam Pro Tem, I'm going to get it right, asked was what data supported whether we would see higher or lower voter turnout above or below Sacramento. That was actually the question we asked. And you said, hey, let's pull up this data, right? And when we looked at it, as far as I can tell, that data doesn't segment anything. It's if you take that entire district in its entirety, that is that's the amount we were looking. That's that percentage, right? District 2, 4A, right? That's the whole thing, not above or below Sacramento. That was the question we asked.
Yeah. And then there would be the assumption
that answers it.
There would be the assumption too that District 1 would have higher propensity voters in it as well. So you would have lower propensity voters in District 2 and higher propensity voters in District 1. And so
no matter where they live, Sacramento, but right, like as far as that number, that's the entire thing put together. That's what that is, right? Bridge, Washington, but below Sacramento, the rivers. That's what that entire number represents, is as a district, you see lower voter turnout.
Lower voter turnout in this one than the other maps, yes.
Awesome. Thank you. That
And
I
Joe,
guess it just,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
go ahead, please.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, the CVRA was passed because the poorer areas have lower voting. That's just, I mean, I just want everyone to keep that in mind.
The point I'm trying to make is that the argument is that there would be nobody above the north of Sacramento Avenue that could get elected. That was the claim.
This is what I'm saying with this map over here. I think it would be much more difficult for people on the north Sacramento Avenue to have that, because they have precinct wise, I think they've had lower voter turnout than to the south of Sacramento Avenue.
I think, though, your existence on this council is evidence that you have been able to grab voters, having lived in the north of Sacramento Avenue. So I think that, just kind of doesn't seem to make much sense to me that we can make a blanket statement like that with evidence that flies in the face of that.
I'm one individual, and what I'm looking at is the future, Karina. I'm not always going to be here. And what I'm saying is the intent of the CVRA and what we're trying to protect, as the intent of the CVRA. As for myself, I've lived in this community since 1965. And, people have known me. And it's, as I said, it's not about me. It's about what's going to be happening in the future. I will not always be.
I appreciate that. I just don't want to accept as fact blanket claims that are unsubstantiated when we're making discussions, So that's the reason for my challenge. I don't want to.
Well, who before me, really? Before I got on the council, was being elected from the north. That was pretty hard. The voting, the majority of voting came from the south areas, and in the north areas. We may have a higher population, but we certainly have lower.
Well, I certainly don't live in the southern district or areas, and I think if we certainly want to pay attention to arguments, but I want to make sure that those that we are relying upon have some, and that have substantiated factual basis. So that's just the point I'm trying to make. Not anecdotal, not I've talked to this person and that person, but rather real information. We're trying to make a very important decision here.
Yeah, we realize that. And I'm saying I just don't think anyone from the north will ever be elected. I'm not talking about the rivers. I'm talking about this map here where Sacramento, Avenue divides. I just don't think it will happen because of the way we've seen, I've seen the different precincts, over the years, and they just don't have high propensity voting over there. Remedial areas are elected at large, so. And I didn't always live in the rivers. I lived on Pierce Street and I lived on Hardy for many, many years.
I'm sorry, I'm not challenging that where you've lived, council member. I just wanted to point out that we've had a recent election and we've had representatives above to the north of Sacramento Avenue. That's all. And that's recent.
Yeah, I think I'm the only person that does. When you have 4 council members, in other areas, you may not consider yourself part of the South, but as far as we were concerned, there was a freeway that divided us for a long time. Before the Palmadesi intersection came in, and before we had the underpass that connected us, by the railroad, there really was a division, and we saw it that way in the north.
I think that the point of looking at these maps is to get rid of the old narrative and to reimagine our city as a place where we value all voters and that we're trying to meet the needs and the vision of the CVRA and not subscribe to outdated narrative. As an at-large community,
right.
We have, I think that it does us all a disservice to attribute certain council members as having less interest in the north side than others. And certainly it is an older part of our neighborhood, but we have invested significant, we've made a significant investments, and we are making probably the most significant investment coming up. So, I mean, I think at this point, that's part of the reason why I looked at the quadrants as well, so that we could escape that.
All right. Well, I've never ever accused anyone of having less interest, maybe just less knowledge about that area. I mean, we've obviously had many people come forward asking to keep the north intact, you know, and I don't know, it's because they're from the north that their words are not weighed as heavily, you know, as others. But I, for one, you know, take those voices and consider very much what they've said about keeping the north intact.
I think we all do, Madam Council Member. I think, you know, we've all argued for different versions. For me, with 9, I wanted to keep Brighton Broderick together. And I've said that for meeting after meeting. The interest here is in the riverfront and creating, putting an affluent district with other similarly situated populations and communities in the city. It isn't the narrative of splitting up the north. If anything, I think the north would benefit by having 2 attentive council members responding to the diverse array of needs in the north. I think, if anything, that does a great service to our northern residents.
Right, but it depends what you also consider the north, because if you look at 1 and 2, it's split by Sacramento Avenue. And what I'm saying is, you know, the goal is to have people in the north pick their representatives, not to continue to have people from the south. And there is a regional south of, you know, a region south of Sacramento Avenue that's had higher propensity of voting. And that, I believe this map would interfere with that. That is what I've been speaking of.
Well, thank you so much. I do want to bring it back to, thank you, just to express my appreciation for all of the input that we've received from the community, the attention to taking a look at the various, you know, maps, you know, crafting maps, and the public input we received. Really respect and appreciate all those that have contributed and their understanding of our city's history, dating back to when we became incorporated as a city, and our plans for the future. And just also our, you know, business, you know, partners who are interested in seeing, you know, what is along in the riverfront, our growth, you know, the bridges, which map 2 will benefit from 2, as far as our map 4A, which would benefit from 2 bridges. They will benefit from some of the city's planning in the future, and the investment, and some of the innovative investments that have been set in place since we lost historically what we had achieved in the past. And the EIFD, the Enhanced Infrastructure Districts, was first created to make sure that areas in our community along the riverfront, which were industrial in the past, and we deindustrialized them and laid the groundwork so that we can enhance our infrastructure along the riverfront. And just to see, you'll see article after article, some of the progress that's been made as far as those that are shedding some light, and the green zones that, you know, green means go, that SACOG has, you know, highlighted what we've accomplished out here along the riverfront. And, you know, seeing that is an area that is attracting people from all over the place, you know, seeing that it is a thriving community, and we'll continue to see more construction, more housing. We'll continue to see, you know, a beautiful hotel along that area. So that area is going to be, I think, just an area that we're going to be able to see a lot of progress and future. So that is what I foresee, what that area represents as far as District 2. As we look at District 1, I do see that as an area, you know, that we would like to make some investments, but it's not a priority right now. We do have West Capitol Avenue that has gone through. and we've improved on West Capitol Avenue. So as we move forward in the future, something I'd like to be able to see, is also investments in that area, similar to the areas that I'm seeing 3 and 4 are continuing to grow. We have future development, and we will also establish more infrastructure as far as those particular areas. So in map 6, it would have divided the benefit that it would have received in the since the inception of the city, but map 4 pretty much carves that out and protects that, and that's how I see map 4A. It is achieving that. It's preserving that, and that representative will be doing a lot to make sure that continues to happen. And so since that seems like the preferred map among the majority of the council members here, from what I'm hearing, it is map 4A that I've heard from 3 council members here today. And with that, I'd like to make sure that the redistricting partners representatives let us know what their feedback is on what they need from us.
I will ask if there is any kind of minor changes you would like to make to the map. We can make them right now, but also if you just want to move it forward as is, we don't have to run additional mapping software things on it. So we won't have to take that break.
If I may, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
If you had a statement, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Just if you wanted to answer Joe's question.
Yeah, the only question that I had around 4 was around the where District 4 stretches into Old West Sac across the canal, and to prevent that or to keep it below the canal, could you go into the Linden Loop and pick up households there enough to what I'm saying, when map 4A up on the upper north part of 4, there you go, that stretch. Yeah, and then if you went down into the Linden Loop, which is just south of your cursor, there you go, and picked up all the interior of the Linden Loop, which I think most residents in these neighborhoods, it surrounds the Southport Town Center and the high school, has a lot in common in that area. Is there enough households to stop that migration north and pick it up there? And then I think the challenge here, which we're going to get into, which I don't want to get into necessarily, is 3. You're taking away households from 3 in essence, and that something would have to stretch. They'd have to pick it up somewhere.
Right. So remember, it has to cross the channel at some point.
Oh, that's right.
Not enough people in the south. So as you start taking away this, basically this district will start.
It would have to go up. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for answering that question.
I mean, we can look at reducing bringing in this area right here, so this community is all together, or potentially reducing this back.
And I think my concern goes back a little bit into what some of the earlier discussion, because I think the opportunity for District 2 is obviously a lot of the things that, in my mind, the opportunity for representation from Old West Sac, from up north, I think I'm not looking at up north, in areas above West Capitol, in Michigan Avenue area, or again over into the Washington and Broderick neighborhoods. There could be a pretty strong coalition built there for somebody, and I'm trying to see if even a few of those households, keeping them in the green, so to say. That Old West Sac neighborhood is a pretty high propensity voting block, I believe. So again, just something I'm thinking about. And again, I don't want to take it too far, but I think that would help strengthen 2's voting population. I think, again, I did not grow up in Broderick. I'm not going to profess to this, but just my colleague, Councilor Arcala, knows it and has lived here as long as she has, like as my wife has. We don't know, but I think there is the opportunity there. What I see in too is the opportunity for, this is what every candidate has to do, whether we had to do it as an at-large member or now here in district members. Whoever wants, to win a seat, they have to build a coalition of other voters. And I think there's a real opportunity here. I would make the argument for folks to find a coalition because it's just not going to be new. I get the mayor's point that there's going to be a lot of growth on the riverfront. There's going to be a lot of new households in 8 to 10 years when this gets revisited again. But a majority of the households are going to be in these older neighborhoods. And I think that's where the opportunity lies, to make sure they have a voice in the growth that happens. That is one of my concerns is around, as the growth comes, how do we maintain the soul of our community? Broderick, very much the soul of our community. And how do we maintain that? How do we keep local small businesses and the spaces for them to move into? Those are very real initiatives that we are going into. And how do we curate all that? And I think that having them in those districts, giving them a better opportunity to vote there is and run and have a voice in those processes is a very real thing. So that's where I kind of want to look at it, is make sure they have a pretty strong voting bloc. And I think
what I'm having a hard time understanding, Councilmember Ledesma, is the question that Joe raised. Is there any refinement you're looking for? Which I'm not sure.
I would say the only refinement is to bring down the amount of reach into the Old West Side, where the purple meets the green.
I see.
That would be my one.
Joe, do we stretch it to the left a little more to accomplish that? Is that something that the purple to between the peach 1 and 3, can you stretch it out to accomplish that?
The question really is bringing 2 down into this area, right? We could explore. I think for the most part, it's something I could look at. Again, it does have to cross at some point, and so you can either start going into this community if you do move the line, and then we could take away from there, although I'm not sure if these are houses or anything. I would have to play around with it on the map.
So one way to think about this is that 3 and 4 are both districts that are already underpopulated. 3 is underpopulated by 2.5% and 4 is underpopulated by 3.3. So if you're saying we're going to take more population away from the 3 or 4, at some point you're going to go way outside of deviation. In this plan, District 1 is overpopulated by 5.8, and District 2 is at exact population. It has 0 population deviation. So you could theoretically take from 1 and give to 2, but you couldn't go the other way. So you are somewhat boxed in on this plan where you have the North and South districts that are kind of separated both in that makeup of having the underpopulated down in the South. So really, I think it's hard to think about a way to take that green and put it into the purple without having to have significant changes between 3 and 1.
I think I understand that, Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just looking at the numbers on 1 and 2 and seeing the population. That is one thing. Those are the 2 big districts in this map.
And you could balance them, but it's really a one-way street. You can only balance them to give population to 2 and take away from 1. You can't give population to 1 because then your overall plan would go outside the 10% requirement.
Okay, so you answered my question about how do we is there an opportunity to redistribute 4, and it's likely not.
Right. I think that's the answer. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's not that much flexibility to modify that, right? At this point, it sounds full, right?
Yeah, within the construction of this plan, it is unfortunate. The census blocks can be relatively large within the range that you have to play with for your deviation. So it's not like we have a lot of population to play with here. And your deviation already being at, what is it, 9.6, Joe? Means that unless you're moving like from 2 to 1, then you really are boxed in.
Any other suggestions by the council members to make some? I don't think there's much we can do. I think this is it at this point, but I'm I don't know if there's anything else from the council members to make a suggestion.
Yeah, my only two were what Councilmember Ledesma had mentioned, and we have the answer to that. And the other was to ensure that the rivers were intact and they were captured. And we discussed that as well.
Mm-hmm. So are you, Mayor Pro Tem Orozco, did you want them to be captured?
Well, in a best case scenario, but at this juncture, it doesn't sound like that's very optimistic.
This is a question regarding the rivers.
Yes, those streets surrounding the borders of
Yeah, so this one maintains
that little block there.
The vast majority of it. The problem is that we can't really split census blocks because, again, the census doesn't tell us the exact addresses for people, and so we don't know how many people we're taking out and how many people we'd be giving to each district. And this census block, which happens to have a few houses around the rivers, attaches to communities in what looks like the Bright area, but also this middle school and then a few of the areas around here. So you'd be taking that all in, or in order to add all the rivers together, or you can leave it as is.
Do we know how many households? I think you might have mentioned that you didn't, but we don't know how many are not getting captured by this current map as drawn.
We do not know how many households are in it. I mean, you can kind of count on the map, but we can't tell how many people live in those houses. So.
Oh no, I don't mean how many people, how many houses we would be missing.
No, we don't have that information. But it's some of the houses along what looks like Westlake Drive, Waterford Drive. Remember, there are there's like 2 rows of houses right here. One of them are within the gated community, and then one of them are within the Bright neighborhood. And they're all part of the same census block.
Yeah. Well, then I think that answers your question, Mayor Pro Tem Orozco, that it is what it is.
So, Madam Mayor, what's our? I don't see any. Thanks, Paul, Joe, for the explanation of kind of where we're at here. So I'm not sure what.
Joe, do you need the 10 minutes at this point to?
I don't. I don't know if we wanted to have a question about numbering and potentially sequencing.
That question is up now at this point, the sequencing.
Well, we can discuss this at the next meeting, or we can discuss this now. I believe part of the resolution, though, John, would be to include this in the resolution for next week, right?
We were planning to have that discussion next time.
Great.
So the law states that you have to have the map with a potential sequencing and numbering system, and we can have a just arbitrary one with 1, 2, 3, 4, and some in 22, some in 24, and just do what we've been doing. So you can pass this map as it is, and you can deal with that numbering at the next hearing.
So John, can you give us some direction on what you'd like to see here?
I think, we've, as Paul mentioned, we've got language in the staff report that already indicates a potential sequencing. So we've covered our bases there. So
I see.
I think I want to make sure we're getting clear direction from the council. It sounds like what you were saying is that the map that you would like published and that cannot be changed for next week is map 4A and unchanged from its current edition. So the as is map 4A sounds like the direction. Just I want to confirm that before we stop.
It sounds like it's the direction to me. I've heard that to be the majority here. 4A is the direction. And then the potential sequence is unchanged from what I'm reading here. A1 equals first, B equals 2 equals second, and then C equals 3 equals third, and then D equals 4 is fourth. Is that the sequencing that you're suggesting we take up?
Right, and again, that's just a potential sequencing. So the council has complete, liberty to adjust that at the next meeting, and we'll frame that discussion.
Thank you.
At the meeting of the 18th.
Okay. Does council want to wait to make a decision on that, or do you want to have a recommendation to include that now? Would you like more explanation on that while we're here, by the way?
I think a little more. I mean, let's not go into a cold, folks. We're here. So if John, if you want to kind of walk through your scenario, just so the public and everybody has.
That's what I think. Wow, that's very helpful.
Okay. Yeah, and I will try, and I've got both Jeff Mitchell, the city attorney, and redistricting partners to back me up if I misstep. But they're, obviously now the city has, 5, at-large council members. We're talking now 4 elected council members and an at-large mayor. So going forward for the interim period, there's going to be 2 new districts that will vote in 2022 and 2 districts that will be elected in 2024. And the decision for the council will be which 2 districts are up for election in 22 and which 2 districts are up in 24. So that is the question. The election code requires us to put forward a potential sequence, which we just went, in numerical order so that we have that on paper as a potential, but the council could, for example, have 2 and 3 go first and 1 and 4 go in 2024, or any order. There's basically 6 ways you could do it, and any of those are open to you. So that's a discussion that we had planned to frame for the next meeting.
John, when you say, like, for example, a theoretical 2 and 3 go first and 1 and 4 go second, 2 and 3 go first, meaning they run in 2022, and then 1 and 4 is 2024.
That's correct. Thank you. That's how I should have said it.
Okay.
So John, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
John, I have a question. I haven't even served 2 years. And for example, Mr. Ledesma is at the end of his 4 years. Is that something we should consider when we're planning these sequences? Is there something that gives us direction there? I mean, is there anything
Let me
be aware of?
Paul or Jeff on that.
So the state law doesn't give a lot of direction on the sequencing. The state law does say that you should consider the intent of the CVRA and the input from the community. So if there is input from, say, Mr. Rafferty or from others in the community that have been giving public comment as to what they would see, you should be giving that special consideration. It doesn't say that you have to do whatever somebody suggests, but you should be considering it. With that, it also has been acceptable in many, many, many cities, school districts, water districts, other agencies that are doing this to not use this sequencing as a way to try to cleave somebody away from a seat where they could be situated in a district that comes up when their seat comes up. Now, we don't know where any of the incumbents live, and I honestly don't know when your terms expire either. So if you're looking at plans, and that can be something after you've identified a map where you could kind of figure out how to ensure that you're not purposefully trying to misalign one of these districts with when incumbents are terming out, then that's fine. There's nothing that would stop you from having that be a component of the decision making. It shouldn't be the only component of the decision making, but it should be, but it can be something, and traditionally has been something that is done in these CBRA conversions.
If I could just add, you are elected to your term right now too, so it's not as if the new districts would impact that. So you, if you were elected in 2020, you would serve until 2024, regardless of when your district is up for re-election.
Yeah, Joe brings up an important point. People think, oh, this redistricting plan, it takes effect immediately. The redistricting plan will actually take effect over the course of the next 2 election cycles. After 2022, you will essentially have a hybrid city council where you'll have 2 council members who are elected in districts and 2 council members who were elected at large. If one of the at-large council members were to retire or leave, you would actually have a citywide election to replace them, because that at-large election is in place until 2024. Then in 2024, you have the other 2 seats elected at the district level. And only after the 2024 election are all the council members in a districted system. So the districted system essentially takes effect over the course of 2 election cycles. And in 2023 to 2024, you'll be in like a hybrid.
Paul, did you help with our school board districting? And the only reason why I ask is because I think Councilmember Alcala, when you transitioned over from the school board over to our council, they moved your seat from being at large, right? Even because it wasn't done, to a district, which would be contrary, Paul, to what you just said.
You only have to look across the river to find a city that has done that wrong.
You don't even have to look across the river. You can actually apparently look here.
Yeah. It can be confusing because people think, hey, we did the redistricting last week. Now all these districts take effect. They don't actually. Redistricting is for your upcoming elections. It doesn't undo any voter choices that were made in the past. So every vote in 2020 or in 2018 that was cast for a city council member, those votes are sacred. And we don't kind of just wipe that away. We let those terms go through their entirety. And it's only after the new lines take effect and people elect their new council representatives, they take effect. But we do see.
Just to be clear, so in that case, Councilmember Alcala, right? She transitioned out of the seat. So it wasn't like you wiped out the votes. She found a new seat, right? Which was on her council. And so in that case, they decided to do with that seat, right, that she had vacated, that was an at-large seat and still had 2 years left on it. They said, you know what? We've got districts right now. We're going to use the seat and then assign it to the district, right? So it wasn't like those votes were wiped out. But I just want to be clear.
They did an appointment,
Yes.
And they did the appointment to somebody who actually lived in the new district.
Yeah.
That could be fine. They would be able to appoint anybody in the entire school district boundaries, and they could just say, hey, let's make our lives easier and appoint somebody that actually
from the district
area. They could make that choice. That's not invalid. What would be invalid is if they held a special election and only allowed voters in that district, that new district, to vote, because it would be the votes of the entire school district that has ability. Yeah.
That's helpful. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Again, the question is at this point, so I just wanted to go over a little bit. So we have at this point 2 council members who are up in 2022. And at that point, so what you're, considering, asking us to consider is the sequencing, maybe, around that a little bit. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure this out. This sequencing has always been a little challenging, figure out how to go about it.
Yeah, like I said, we don't know where all the incumbents live, but let's say as an example that there were 2 incumbents that were up in 2022 and they were in different districts. You could align those districts to the 2022 election and have the other districts be aligned to 2024. But that's also after taking into consideration any input from the community. It wouldn't want to be the only consideration, but a flip of that would be, as an example, if the council said, aha, there's one council member we don't like, we're going to purposefully put them in a district that doesn't align to that election. That would not be in the best interest of the community. That would not be something, it would be something that I think Mr. Rafferty referenced as kind of a reverse gerrymander when he was giving his public comment. So you wouldn't want to do that either. And right now, what's on your plate is selecting the one map. And if this one map does move to the next hearing as essentially your proposed final map, then you can make that final sequencing decision next.
Okay. I think
Madam Mayor, let me just, I don't have a whole lot to add because I think it's all been covered. I agree with the analysis that we've heard. I do think, I do want to reemphasize that under the CVRA, you are to consider the purpose of the CVRA and the community's expressed interest when you make sequencing decisions. My suggestion would be that should be uppermost in your minds. I think beyond that, there are other considerations that you can, that can come into play. I see Mr. Rafferty's hand is up. Normally, I know you closed public comment. In light of the fact that he's the attorney representing the plaintiff in the CVR litigation, you might decide to give him a couple of minutes to express his opinion on that.
Okay, thank you so much for catching that. I didn't see it. So at this point, I will open it up to public comment and allow Mr. Rafferty to speak. I see 2 hands, but I'm not really sure what that's about.
Well, you can reopen it for public comment. My thought was he is the attorney representing the plaintiff in the case, and I think the plaintiff and his attorney and her attorney have, there's a basis for letting them speak and not necessarily opening it up for everybody else, but it's totally in the council's call.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Madam Clerk, please. I see 2 at this point, so.
We have 3 hands raised.
You have 3 hands raised?
Yes,
ma'am.
Now we have 4.
Oh, geez. I think at this point, I'm only going to allow the plaintiff's attorney because this can go on for a while. We've had a chance to receive written comment.
Mr. Rafferty, would you like to provide comment?
Thank you. And I've communicated this briefly to the clerk directly, but I have some good news. The ends of terms, because I do know where people live and where their terms end, but are irrespective of what map you've chosen. Basically, the northernmost 2 members and the ones that, there's an open seat now in the north, but it would be consistent. They're both up in 2024, I believe, which is probably the right answer. Both of the southern members are up in the gubernatorial election, so there would be no inconsistency at all with having them elected at the end of their terms this November. So it's one of the reasons I thought this would be a relatively painless consequence, a painless process, because a lot of places there is kind of a little bit of backstabbing that's gone on at the sequencing stage, but there's no real basis or opportunity for that here. So it's easy, in my opinion.
Okay, I think you're done, Mr. Rafferty. Thank you. All right, I'll close the public comment till we get a chance to wrap up our comments at this point. I think we're at that point. Any other questions or this has been really helpful. I think that's it. There is another item, is the mayoral term. Is there something we need to bring up on that at this point? Councilmember Early.
No, that was actually the only question that I was going to ask when we began this. That was one of the things, that John brought up, or Madam Mayor, you brought up, that we also need to decide that. I wasn't quite sure if we had to decide that today or if we were going to decide that next meeting. So I just wanted to make sure we caught everything we were supposed to, that was assigned to us.
Yes.
And the obligation there is, pursuant to the settlement, to receive public comment on that. So it's up to the council whether you want to have a discussion or how you want to handle that. We wanted to make sure we framed that discussion so the public and the council would have the opportunity for that conversation.
Let me just add to frame it up a little further. You have a 2-year term right now. So if the council takes no action, you'll continue to have a 2-year mayoral term. The issue that was raised as part of the settlement is a request from the plaintiffs to move to a 4-year term, commencing with the 2024 election. That was their preference. We compromised by agreeing that the council would accept public comment on it. And then ultimately, you can either affirmatively decide to change or take no action, in which case it'll stay as a 2-year term.
And do we need to take public comment now, or can we wait till the 18th?
In the way we had set it up, the idea was, as with Mr. Rafferty's comments, that comments would be made all at the beginning on any one aspect of it. It's up to the council. If you want to reopen it for public comment on specific to the mayoral term, you certainly can do that.
Okay, thank you. Would council like to open it up for public comment on the mayoral term? I think I'll open it up also on the sequencing as well, since that's.
I don't mind hearing from the public, but I thought we already heard from the public on this. But we can hear from the public some more. Sorry, Councilmember Ledesma.
Yeah, just step right over me. So, no, I was going to bring up the point. The reason I wanted the sequencing, at least the discussion about it, because we really hadn't discussed it in public. And I think we would have been caught up in that actual kind of drawing of the maps and getting public input about where boundaries are, et cetera. So I'm kind of the mind that the next meeting of having the public input, the public's absorbing this for the first time. I'm hesitant to sort of jump into it tonight, and it's already 8:30 or thereabouts. Sure. So, and then similarly on the mayoral one, we can the subsequent broach. So, yeah, it's already. But I think that our at least the way I took it, Madam Mayor, was our duty tonight was get to a map. So.
Okay. So at this point, I don't hear from council they want to go into that discussion. So we will carry it over till next week. And I think we're good to go on this item. Any other comments, feedback? Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. And next we will take up Administrative Function Part 2. We have council communications that we will be bringing up, and I will provide my presentation on council communications at next week's meeting, because this has been we've had a long week last week, so I need to prepare. And I'll open it up for anybody else to present any council communications. Councilmember Alcala.
I'm going to make this really quick. We went to cap, and I was on the workforce and education team. And I'm just going to really quickly do some bullet points that we were given, just to give you a synopsis of what we discussed. We went to Washington, D.C. with chambers and many other city council members from throughout the Northern California region, Citrus Heights, areas like that, and Elk Grove. It was, I believe, a very, very productive time that we had in Washington, D.C. We spoke with our congressional members, and the workforce team focused on, one, increasing funding to $105 million for strengthening community college training grant programs administered by the Department of Labor, increasing funding for the Perkins-based state grant program for fiscal year 2022 as part of the campaign to double the investment and CTE. Establish an energy as a national career cluster. Expand grants to states to fund local programs of adult education and workplace literacy, and encourage Congress to reauthorize and reinvest in WAOA at a level that meets current and projected demands. Also ensure that America Competes Act addresses student educational institutional needs. We met with Congressman Garamendi's office, Congresswoman Matsui's office, and there were other congressional offices. We were all put into different teams. And I know that the rest of our council members will probably give their reports next week, but I thought I would just go ahead and give mine very quickly this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other council communications at this time? Nope. All right, we will also next have council calendar.
Good evening. No report tonight.
Thank you. City manager report.
No update tonight. Thank you.
All right, city attorney report.
Sorry, nothing tonight.
All right, thank you. Future agenda item request by council. I don't see any attached, and I'd like to adjourn in the memory of John Velez. He's been a beloved father, as you know, definitely a community presence. Since he has children, and also has been just a wonderful son, brother, uncle, and friend to many. Being a coach to our youth in our local schools who tragically passed away in a motorcycle accident along West Capitol Avenue on Thursday, March 3rd. And he leaves behind his beautiful parents, Danielle and Christina Velez, who are, been strong members of the San Pedro Association, where his daughters were crowned, in the San Pedro festival, the Portuguese festival. And he also has a newborn son, John Jr., beautiful little baby. And so in his memory, I'd like to adjourn.
I would second that.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Early.
Aye.
Councilmember Alcala.
Aye.
Councilmember Ledesma.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Orozco.
Aye.
Mayor Guerrero.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Aye.